This Pendle Council livestream will start in just a few minutes. You can view tonight's meeting agenda by visiting pendle.gov.uk/meetings, where the upcoming meeting notes are available to view. We will go live very soon.
All of the future Pendle meeting agendas, as well as previous meeting reports and minutes, can be viewed on the Council website at pendle.gov.uk/meetings. Tonight's session will start shortly.
Good evening everyone, and welcome to tonight's Executive Committee meeting. My name is Asjad Mahmood, I'm leader of Pendle Council and also the chairman for this committee. We'll do introductions to my left.
Hello, Rose Rouse, Chief Executive.
Good evening, I'm Karen Spencer, Director of Resources.
Hi, good evening, Philip Spur, Director of Place.
Hello, Gemma Louise Wells, Head of Finance.
David Whip, I'm leader of the Liberal Democrat group.
Brian Newman. That's it.
Nadeem.
Well, apologies, Councillor Nadeem Mohammed. Councillor Ash Sutcliffe.
Councillor Sarah Coburn Price, Allsworth and Fulbridge.
Councillor David Price on
Councillor Zafar Ali, representing Clover Hill and Briarfield East, portfolio holder for climate change and environment.
Neil Watson, Assistant Director for Planning.
Simon Gwynn, Chief Executive Officer for Pendle Leisure Trust.
Councillor Hanif.
Paul Preston, Democratic Services Manager.
Emma Barker, Legal Services Manager.
We've especially come out of holidays just for this meeting. So I've got one apology from Councillor Iqbal. Declaration of interest? None. Public question time? No members of the public present. Minutes of the previous meeting.
Move it, Chair.
Second.
Okay, that was okay, that's good. Next item is performance update report Q3. Mrs. Kelly, yes.
So this is the performance update for quarter 3. I'm not going to go through in detail, but just draw your attention to the corporate priorities at paragraph 5 of the 35 corporate priorities. 31 are green, 4 are amber, and they're listed, the amber ones are listed before at 7, 8, 9, below at 7, 8, 9 and 10. KPI performance, 17 are green, this is at paragraph 16, 17 are green, 3 are amber, 5 are red, and then the red ones are detailed below, in the paragraphs below. The only other item I'm going to bring your attention to is the strategic risks at paragraph 29. During quarter 3 we changed the scoring of 3 of the strategic risks. Again, they're itemised there at paragraph 29. Take any questions if anybody's got any.
Any questions from any? Yeah. Just on page 8, you know, we've got the performance 8 KPI there. How about recycling? What kind of I know we're employing extra staff to kind of deal with that kind of stuff. On the
Yes, I'm just looking for
kind of things that we're doing to deal with that, and also on page 9 as well, you know, talk about the payments done online.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'll try and pick up the recycling one. So I think you can see that we are below, but we're not too far below the target level at the moment. As the commentary makes clear, we have employed a recycling officer, and that person's doing a very, very good job on the ground. We are fortunate to have some extended producer responsibility funding. We'll be using part of that to employ additional recycling officers as well. I think, to be fair, it is a challenge for us, it is a challenge for many authorities, but we're working as hard as we can through the recycling officers, publicity campaigns, and so on and so forth. So yes, we appreciate we've got a way to go on this one, but the team is working very, very hard.
You noticed about the percentage of payments made online by customers. How are you trying to help improve on that as well?
So I think this is confusing KPI because this, as we say, this is percentage of payments made online, but actually we try and push people to pay towards direct debit, which isn't picked up in this KPI. So we could be increasing, and we are going to review this KPI for next financial year because we are pushing to get direct debit payments, which would mean this KPI would look worse, if you will. Yeah.
And just one final question in relation to sickness. Again, what help are we providing to members of staff, and you know what is available, and how we're reducing that sickness side of things in staffing?
Yeah, through you, Chair. We're looking at a number of different measures. We have reviewed the triggers when we do reviews between managers and those who are sick, and we think that the triggers are about right. They're actually in line with industry standard. We're also looking at a range of measures. We've got an employee assistance programme to give people support and advice on different things in terms of mental wellbeing, financial wellbeing, that kind of thing. And we're also looking at how we can recognise excellent attendance as well across employees. But it's something we keep a close track on in terms of the short-term reasons people are off sick and the longer term. And we have an active way of managing those longer-term sicknesses to get people back and get them back at work. It's a complex issue, and we're looking at it from all the different angles.
Thank you for that. That's brilliant. Thank you. Just before I bring you in, Dave, can I just ask you a question? Either just push back so we can just turn the table at an angle, so just so the colleagues can see with the members, officers, please.
Everybody can see everybody.
Just because of some of the responsibility, a bit tricky, I think, from
Want to
that
move
angle.
that way, Lee?
Just maybe a slight angle.
Just a minute, Brad.
Just a
There. Thank you. Okay.
David.
Thank you. Could I ask about CP24? And it says, continue to plan the delivery of electrical vehicle charging schemes. Now, Chair, you may recall that probably over 2 years ago now, Councillor Tom Whip successfully moved a proposal in the council chamber which was to get on with the provision of fast EV chargers in the Wellhouse Road car park in Barnoldswick. And the background to that was that Tom had spotted an opportunity where I think it was Instavolt were getting a cash injection of hundreds of millions of pounds to extend their EV charging network. And what Instavolt offered to do in terms of Barnoldswick was to put 2 fast EV chargers into the Wellhouse Road car park. They offered to pay Pendle Council £1,000 a year for each charger, and I think from memory it was a 10-year contract, so there was £20,000 of income. Barnoldswick benefited from 2 fast EV chargers, which there aren't any in the town. There are some county council on-street chargers which are very slow, the sort of speed that you get from a domestic supply. And despite the fact that that was passed by the council, and I think it was under the Conservative administration that the resolution was passed, so you can see how long ago it was, and there was an instruction given to get on with this, nothing whatsoever has happened. Now, in recent times, Councillor Tom Whip and myself have been pressing this issue. Apparently, this is under the wing of the Climate Emergency Steering Group, which, from the feedback that I get, is a talking shop where things are discussed, and then at the end the chair sums up by saying, well, we'll have another report. Well, we don't want more reports. We want some action, and we want some action on the resolutions that have been passed by this council. And in the case of the fast chargers on Wellhouse Road in Barnoldswick, the council could have been earning income from those there. The town could have been benefiting from the additional visitors that might have brought in, and we would have had a better network to encourage people to move to more sustainable modes of transport. So, you know, it should have been a win-win-win, and instead we've just got a lose-lose-lose. So what on earth is going on? Why isn't the Climate Emergency Group Working Group getting on with this? Why is the Climate Emergency Working Group in charge of this in the first place? It really is not satisfactory. And then when I read this, there's a big green tick, and that's what's winding me up. And you know, the narrative is all about, well, the county council are going to, you know, have home charging, this and that and the other. And we've got one property in Pendle that has got a home charging facility, you know, going across the pavement. For goodness sake, how on earth are we going to manage if we can't manage to get EV chargers in? So I hope there's some answers, Chair. Certainly the Climate Emergency Working Group have let the the council down badly, but they've let residents down badly, and they've let the people who drive electric vehicles down badly. I'll declare an interest. I am one of them.
Thank you, David. I know your point. Obviously, I'm not full aware of the full information and background to it, as in the latest update. But that's something that we can pick up and try to get that resolved.
Yeah,
Philip, did you want to come?
Yeah, very, very brief, through yourself, Chair. In terms of that Wellhouse Road car park to the council with, I'm not aware of the situation of that, but we will make sure that I follow up and I'll come back to you on that particular issue ASAP. In terms of the wider issue of electric vehicle charging rollout, you were quite right, we do need to be getting on with this. But as the commentary tries to make clear, we're trying to do this in a strategic way, working alongside LCC and their levy funding, which will bring significant funding into Pendle. We are in conversation with LCC at the moment, but yes, that does need to be moved forward more quickly. But we're moving at the pace as fast as we can at this moment in time. I think in terms of the climate change emergency working group, it is doing a lot of good work across a number of areas. This is one of them. But I do take the point that we need some further momentum around it. So we'll take away the ban onto the car park area. But I think in terms of EVs more generally, we're trying to work alongside LCC. And we are pushing LCC as hard and as fast as we can from our side. But yes, I agree, it does need to be rolled out more quickly.
Thank you for that. Councillor Sarah Corbett.
Thank you. I think I can help you, Mr. Spur, about this because it predates you. But Rose will full remember that the resolution at full council was actually with regard to one contract, and probably, I think I remember you saying at the time, was illegal to try to give a contract at full council to one particular firm. This particular firm had chosen to cherry pick what it considered to be the peachiest car parks in each of the towns, and to say that no further charging points will be provided in subsidiary car parks. So for a big town like Nelson or Cone, it would just leave one place where you could charge your car. And we all know, or we Cone councillors know, having just been to the Winter Bloom last week, that schlepping up and down on foot in Cone is a tiring business, and for accessibility we need to have car park charging and electric bike charging in more than one car park for each town. It is a standing position for every single meeting that we have, and I know that Zafar will back me up on that. We're constantly putting IFTI on the rack, aren't we, asking him where we're up to, and we're always very disappointed, can we do more? But what we tend to find in the last 2 years that this has been going on is that the target has moved, the funding has changed, different funding pots have come in, and the technology has changed. And then we're not also helped by the fact that Electricity North West won't give us a definitive and long answer for the actual power output for each car park. So that appears to change with demand. And there is a cost to asking what each car park can generate electricity-wise, because I think a lot of us agree that we don't want too many slow chargers. We want rapid chargers so that we turn over those visitors to our towns. So that's my question, that's my sort of answer on that. But I wrote, as the chairman of the Climate Emergency Working Group, to the exec about the corporate plan. And I don't know whether this is the appropriate time to mention that for the future, because annually we are looked at and given a score, a bit like Ofsted. It's a climate emergency scorecard. And the last 2 years we've done well, principally down to the excellent work of Mr. Watson in planning. It's given us extra points, and we have got more points. So we've gone back and we've said, how can we do even better on this? How can we improve? And they highlighted that the climate emergency within the corporate plan has a very low profile. So Victor, who's our climate emergency officer, went and asked some additional questions about exactly how can we improve. And I've sent those 5 points as a spreadsheet to the exec, and I hope that perhaps in a future meeting they will discuss this so that the corporate plan can be updated and we can get those extra points when the time comes round again next year, so that Pendle Council does even better in this space. This afternoon, coincidentally, Jessica May sent me the recycling rates nationally. for the best performing councils. And David Walker pointed out that while these other places do, some of them have slightly different services, such as food collection, it's not unbelievably different from what Pendle offer. But what I noticed was all the places with 60% recycling rates in the UK, they're basically in the Chilterns. You know, it's lovely in the Chilterns. It's Three Rivers Council and St Albans Council, but they're all in the Chilterns. So I asked Mr. Walker, what can we do to try to replicate some of the things that they do? And they are things that obviously our recycling officer is doing. I'm sharing all the posts about recycling on my councillor page, and it's getting quite a lot of traction, but I don't see many other councillors sharing it. Perhaps 33 councillors or 32 councillors, if they all shared these posts, it would really get it out into our communities. The final bit that I'd like to ask a question on is this section here, HS9 KPI, bottom of page 8, which is about rental properties. And it says that we've improved 10 rented properties this quarter through informal action and 4 rented properties by informal means. And I just wrote here, you know, overall we're on track to meet our annual target. There has been some sickness. But, you know, Philip Spur knows 14 properties is an absolute drop in the ocean for us, not just in Combe, not just in Waterside, but in the borough. We've really seriously got to do something so that we can take action on more than 14 properties in a year. It causes me dismay that. I don't know whether there is a response on that point.
Do you want to just briefly?
Yeah, very, very briefly, Chair. Yes, it is clearly a significant issue for the authority, for the Borough of Pendle. I've been out with Councillor Coleman Price a couple of times to look at these issues. We are looking at putting additional resource into this area, but that will be subject to, you know, funding agreement through members in due course. So we're very, very keen to get a dedicated officer to look at this activity, but we need funding agreement for that. I'll be coming to members very shortly, Chair.
Thank you. And I think there's also, again, we've got budget for council next week. You know, there's the empty homes officer, so that could be.
May I just make a little statement on that?
No. That's progress. Councillor Zaffarali.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. I just want to echo the comments made by Mr. Spur and of course Councillor Coleman Price. You know, there's a lot going on the climate working group, and of course we now have a climate emergency officer in place who's also got his desk stacked up high with lots of things going on in terms of funding and priorities and applications. But just in terms of car parks and EV charging points, I know there's a lot of background to this, which is obviously, you know, not been mentioned by Councillor Whip. But ultimately, there's always finer intricacies and finer terms and conditions which we as a council have to be open to. And if we don't do our homework correctly and just go with, you know, an option on the table, then unfortunately we're going to be held to ransom, potentially have to pay compensation, potentially be in breach of certain terms and conditions, and of course also potentially be giving away access to public space, i.e. public car parks. So there's a lot of work that has to be done with these sort of facilities. So it's not just a case of, you know, trying to meet a target blindly. So I'm happy to support officers and their work thus far in terms of looking at the various different options. And Councillor Coleman Price mentioned DFTY in particular, who I've also had numerous conversations with in terms of how we're going to tackle our car parking spaces and obviously have suitable EV charging points, and that time is not too far in the distant future, you know, where we will have EV charging points. That's a given, given the way that technology in the world is developing and electric vehicles are developing. Overall, however, you know, as Councillor Coleman Price has mentioned, you know, the working group and the various different stakeholders attached to it have the interests of Pendle and us meeting our target at heart. This executive reinstated its view that we should stick to our original target. We had the opportunity to try and move that target back, but we didn't. We stuck to it because we were confident we can put the right resources in the right departments to try and achieve that. And of course, there's still challenges, Chairman, to that, but I'm still confident that we will meet that target. It might not be here at Pendle Council, but ultimately as a district, we certainly will be hitting that target in the future. I just want to also make a positive mention to both Nelson Town Council and Corn Town Council in relation to the Gib Hill Local Nature Reserve, which of course also affects our biodiversity targets. And I'm really happy to see that work and the group that's been set up to try and protect that area of beauty is well on its way. I believe a chair, are you the chair, Councillor?
No, it's William Stevenson.
William Stevenson, yeah. And I know both town councils have got a key interest in that, and that's the way that, you know, as a district we're going to have to operate to try and achieve our overall targets. So I just want to really make that point as well about the positive achievements that we've also made. Whilst there are challenges, it's obviously clear that we're all on the same page and we want to try and achieve those targets.
Okay, Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. Just coming back to EV charging, Councillor Ali, it says that we need to do our homework on this. Well, I think the length of time that this has been taken, because we are talking years now, we've done as GCSEs, A-levels, we've done as BSc, we've done as MSc, and we must be working on as PhD now, because, you know, it's taken eons. Sorry, pardon the pun with eon and electricity. In terms of the Wellhouse Road project, there was not an illegal resolution at council. It was a resolution to say to negotiate, and the other obstacles thrown in the way by Councillor Coburn-Price, she mentioned North-West electricity. I just point out that it's Northern Power Grid in West Craven, formerly Yorkshire Electric, and that the company in question had offered to pay the whole of their costs, the electricity supply costs, in determining the suitability of the location. Councillor Coburn-Price mentions electric bike charging. Now, there is no point whatsoever in providing charging points for electric bikes, because the batteries are small enough that they can be charged from a 13 amp domestic plug, which we have several around the wall here. And what users of electric bikes do is, if they've got the little charger with them, they plug into a 13 amp socket. It might be at a cafe, you know, wherever they are, to do any necessary recharging. Or if they are travelling from point A to point B, staying overnight, say in a hostel, they charge the electric bike using the domestic supply within that property. So there's no point putting EV chargers for bikes everywhere. It's a false way of going about it. Nobody's going to leave a £3,000 bike lying around next to a charger, because by the time they get it charged up, somebody else will have nicked it and it'll have gone. And just the last thing on that, the Instavolt, as I recall, weren't going to charge the council anything. It was a case that they were paying all the costs and going to pay the council. So it's not a case of, well, the funding has changed and we need to work with these new funding streams. You know, somebody was going to provide a facility, pay the council, and we'd have had the benefit for 2 years. But no, there's a big stumbling block in terms of I do not know what in not getting forward with it. And it's bizarre, absolutely bizarre.
Okay, right. 3 final speakers. Councillor David Coburn-Price, and then Sarah Coburn-Price, and then Councillor Brian Newman.
I defer to Sarah to kick off first to respond,
And
then I'll come out.
And if it can stick to the agenda item, please. If it's
Two
because I
little
think
points, and it's a plea.
diverting a little bit.
It's
so.
a plea. The empty homes officer, which I think is a superb idea, could I ask that it is considered that the title is not empty homes officer, but blighted homes officer? Because actually, it's not wholly necessarily empty, and where the houses are occupied, but with residents with broken windows, that blight, not only on the occupant, but on the wider area, is something that Pendle Council should care about very much. So that's just a small plea. And then with regards to bike charging, it actually is in the Cone Master Plan, and I'm really, really pleased that it is, because essentially they're not just like cars where you just park them near a little stalk and recharge them. They're completely safe lockers, and there is a network that you can actually see of where these are around the world, around the country. There's a map, I can share it with the exec. And the bikes go in these lockers, they're completely safe and secure, so you can go shopping and enjoy Cone, secure that your £3,000 bicycle is safe, and it's being recharged at the same time. And obviously in the lengthy rebuttal that Councillor Whip gave, he did not mention that his firm was just merely to cherry pick specific car parks, leaving the rest unable to use this technology. And I think that's a very pertinent point.
Right, another topic. Let's go to page 3 of the corporate priorities, which is all about the asset management, the asset transfers. Overview and scrutiny were privileged to see. I think the exec passed it to us to have a look at the overall asset management strategy, which did talk about a lot of the properties we own, the assets we own, and obviously there were various sections of that which were all about items to be transferred or disposed of or mothballed or whatever. So I note it says slow, limited progress. I know obviously you've done some prioritisation in terms of those assets which do or don't generate income. I think you've got lots of expressions of keenness from town and parish councils, so I would say please don't let it drift on much longer. They're obviously keen to take it on. I know from a Lancashire Bridge point of view, which I attend, they're keen to take on those really knackered garages. They really are a mess, and obviously now we're basically having to report them to Pendle to do enforcement action, do some work which Lancashire Bridge were quite happy to do themselves. So that's an example of where, for a meagre income, we're now having time, money, etc. having to be spent on these kind of things, which we should just say, well, it's of low value or no value to Pendle. Let's get it off our books, let's get it transferred out, or let's get things sold to interested members of the public and companies and whatever. So if I can urge you to push that along and not drift too far in 25, 26.
Yeah, thank you for that, David. Yeah, obviously we've got the asset working group, and I think you know, we've got the local government reorganisation that's going to be taking place within the next 2 to 3 years. It's crucial that, you know, we review and obviously, you know, give a bit for it. You know, there's like not urgency, but you know, there's like faster pace to look at the different options, and you know, there's close working with all the town councils and parish councils, and I know, like I said, there's lots of good work going on behind the scenes as well with officers. So I've got Hanif, sorry, Councillor Brian Newman first.
Thank you.
And then Hanif, and then...
I'm normally not here, but a quick question. Now that the government has moved the goalposts on electric vehicles, they are going to be charged road tax. What does the council think will be the outcome? Will it be a greater use of electric vehicles or less?
It's also it's obviously a national policy. We don't have much control or say over that, how that's implemented and how that works. I mean, we're going electric, but then sometimes I think, not personally, not the council's view, but the batteries have lots of poisonous substances within it itself. So you need a lot of the recycling plants and all that kind of thing. So it's a quite complicated kind of process.
But do you think it's that the progress that we're trying to make meets the demand that is going to be here when this new legislation comes in for electric vehicles.
We're hoping that, you know, that in the government it kind of steps in and helps us with the implementation of the infrastructure and all that kind of thing. So yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So all those in favour? Thank you. That's carried. Next item is quarter 3 revenue and capital budget monitoring. Gemma Louise.
I'll take the reporter's read, but just highlight a couple of things if that's all right. So the story of quarter 3 is one of changed fortunes, mostly hung around our improved performance on investment income. Item 1 notes a swing of forecast. We were forecasting at quarter 2 an overspend of over £500,000. This is now down to less than £1 million. Well, in fact, sorry, over around £100,000. A lot of this is us holding grants. Slow progress on some of the major capital programmes has left us with a lot of money in the bank, and we've made hay while it's been sunny, essentially. Some other changes just to highlight in the report from last time. Additional running costs are highlighted in point 2, item 3 on there. Additional running costs of our administrative buildings, this building and number 1, where some of our staff are held. The pay award was agreed in quarter 3 and was paid to staff during December, so that's all included in the figures. Point 10 highlights exactly how well we're doing on investment income. We'd set out a budget of £750,000. We are now likely to exceed 1.5 million in investment income. Table 2 was new last quarter, but that just lays out how we've done with some of the markers that were put into the budget last year for fees, income increases and some savings. And then item 11 just states the change that this makes to our use. It should say of the budget strategy reserve. This is not the full picture of all the reserves that will be used on specific programmes and specific ring-fence grants that will be used in the year as well. This is just what was the budget gap at the beginning, has obviously now changed. 12 and 13, 13 and 14, just let you know how we're doing with the statements of accounts. Statements of accounts were signed off for 22-23 during October 24, and the statement of accounts in draft for 23-24 will publish on the council's website on Monday the 13th of January. There will be no audit of these statements of accounts. Grant Thornton has issued a draft disclaimer on the accounts due to a national backstop. Also, just one last thing, potential borrowing on the capital, which is a full breakdown of what's happening on the capital programme in Appendix A. Potential borrowing for this programme is now up to £8.6 million.
Thank you, Gemma. For the detailed report, I'm happy to move the report as set out. Mostly, Gemma Louise kind of highlighted the key issues within the report. There have been some challenges. There were, for example, costs that we didn't envisage, say for Cornmarket Hall and also Pendle Rise. But then also, in a good way, we've had the higher income from the interest payments, so that's kind of offset that a little bit. That's helped. So I'm happy to move that report. Second it?
Yeah, I'll second the chair, but can I ask a question as well, please? Page 3, paragraph 7. Recently on the financial services, we've spent 103k on ICT. That's a very large spend. May I ask why such a large overspend?
The overspend, I think, is just due to historical budgets that have not tracked the cost of running the ICT for a council. So the budget was set at around £100,000. Overspends have been seen over the last 2 to 3 years. In this region, we have also needed to update a lot of people's kit to move us onto Windows 11. So that is that's been happening this year, and it runs into next year as well to keep us within legal time frames.
So next year, will we be spending on budget, or are we going to go overspend again?
Next year we've put a capital item in to help us to buy new kit, and so that we can fund that through borrowing and paying back through the MRP.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Councillor David Coleman-Price.
Thank you. Yes, it's one of those things, isn't it, that in a way we're only really doing well or coming back on overspends, etc., because of interest income. And obviously the interest income comes because we've got a large amount of money sitting in the bank because our other projects are delayed. So it's not a good story either way, really. You know, we'd all like to get these capital programmes pushed forward, done, delivered, etc., delivering benefits for residents, both in Conan and in Nelson and all around the borough, in fact. It is obviously a sad truism of all these sorts of capital grants as well, that there's never any revenue element to them either. And I think that's an unfortunate way that all these sorts of grants are structured. I suppose you could say, I know in lots of Karen's reports where she talks about the future and what the future may hold, we know we're going to be spending that money, so we know we have to do things in order to make sure the budgets can balance. The next paper on the agenda, for example, has some very worrying sentences in. I think it's probably just one of those ones where we know what it is and we say, well, you know, it's good we pulled it back for this quarter. Let's see what the final quarter holds. Sitting on the Accounts and Audit Committee, obviously we know why the accounts have to be qualified. Disclaimer opinion is never good, and I can never understand why it doesn't seem to matter too much in the public sector, but there we go. In the private sector will be apocalyptic news. You'll be basically to give back the keys and walk and go home. So the only plea I'd make really from a capital programme point of view is that we've got the appendix which has all the various plans in, and then we've got at the bottom bit, we've got the bits about where the money comes from, and we know that a majority of it is from grants and such like. I think one of the pleas I made to Richard Gibbs when he was here, just to try to marry up which is which. Because obviously when we look at it as councillors, we're thinking, well, do we have flexibility to reduce that one or cancel that one? But it may be it's wholly grant funded anyway, so it's not like we're borrowing to fund it. So just a bit of matching between the sources of information would be useful, I think. So rather than categorise it by type, almost categorise it by who's paying for it, and that way we can understand it better and make better decisions.
Thank you for that, Councillor. I mean, you kind of talk about the revenue aspect, and I think that element was obviously under the previous government, and that's the way the governments work. And we didn't envisage, like I say, and I mentioned that earlier on as well, that we didn't envisage all the revenue aspect of renovating Cornwall Road and also Pendle Rise. But then we've had sound investment internally with and sound management, and we've got good balanced budgets within the council, and that must be also credit to David and as a previous resources portfolio holder. Councillor David.
Thank you, Chair. It's this issue of the revenue cost of these big in Nelson, the Pendle Rise, which is funded from the town deal money. In Colne, the particular project that I've been closely involved with is the Market Hall, where as a shared administration we clearly set out that we weren't going to turf traders onto the street, and sadly the previous administration had every intention of doing that. We've made sure that they had temporary accommodation, Councillor Hanif working very closely on that, and I think that's been a success story because we've got 40 traders in the temporary market hall in Harkley Square, all of whom want to come into the new market hall when that opens later this year. So I think that's a success story. The downside is the costs of operating all that, add up to knocking on £250,000. The costs of operating Pendle Rise, as it stands at the moment, with a dwindling number of traders, is close to £250,000. So you've got £500,000 of revenue consequence from those two projects, which has to be absorbed by the revenue budget. Now, my question is about the representations that have been made to government to actually change some of that capital funding to revenue funding in order to pay for the revenue costs of the maintaining the property before we knock it down in the case of Pendle Rise. And I asked this question of the MP of the current government at the Nelson Town Deal Board, and his response was, well, have you got any spare money? And well, no, there isn't really any spare money. However, there is the possibility that the capital costs of carrying out the acquisition and all the rest, all involved with that, and demolition to get a cleared site, could come in at £1 million less than we were anticipating. Now, if that's the case, there's £1 million there that could be revenuised to pick up what is going to be £1 million of revenue costs by the time we get to the end of this process, in buying and knocking down Pendle Rise and doing that other levelling up funded work in Pendle. So I think that on the revenue side, we're more than balancing the books. We're actually doing pretty well, because there's £500,000 of expenditure there that wasn't anticipated, wasn't planned for in the bids that were put in by the previous administration, and we're coping with that and coming in with a budget that is, you know, not going to be so far away from what was set out at the beginning of the year. So, what response have we had from Jonathan Hinder? What response, if any, have we had from the government in terms of tweaking the funding in order to pick up these costs, give our revenue budget and reserves £1 million boost, and actually make those projects, in the words of mentioned earlier on, Richard Gibson, consume their own smoke. In other words, it was never anticipated that we were going to have to take money from all the rest of Pendle in order to make the Pendle Rise project stack up, and we shouldn't be doing that. We need to get that brass out of government, make them change it from capital to revenue in order that we can do the work, do it properly, and not penalise the rest of Pendle. Any responses from anybody?
Thank you. I mean, one thing I would say, one positive is that, you know, that money that we have from the government, that is being invested.
Yeah, yeah.
And we're getting the return, and they mentioned that we're getting £1.5 million this year. So, you know, there is that benefit aspect of that. So that you can recoup it in a way, that £250,000 or whatever.
Don't let them off the hook, as Jack.
No, I more the merrier. We want more money. Karen.
So a couple of points. The government will not let us convert capital to revenue. That is against their own rules. You can do it the other way around, but you can't convert capital to revenue. The other point was, whilst at the minute we're forecasting we'll have an underspend, I think it's very unlikely when we get there. You know, inflation's still going up, so yeah, I'm not thinking we'll have an underspend on the town deal. And when the council accepted the Town Deal grant, we would have signed an offer letter to say that we would pick up any additional costs and cover the costs, any costs that weren't foreseen, and then we would have signed that with government because everybody else has had to do it. So I think we'll get little joy from going to government.
Thank you. Councillor Allen.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Paragraph 8, delays to the novation of the PLT gas contract. What's all that about? What's the issue?
As part of the budget last year, we had discussion with PLT about some savings that we could make by some of the internal things that we do in our management fee to them. We pay them a management fee. They can't claim the VAT back on everything that they pay out of their money, but in the main, we can claim VAT back on almost everything that we spend. So we had a discussion about paying them less of the management fee we'd agreed and paying directly for their utilities. One of the contracts, the electrical contract, was easy to novate and has helped us to save that VAT loop there. The gas contract has been a little more difficult. There was some concern because of the leisure reviews that we've had quite a few of, that we wouldn't actually be continuing to run the sites, and they wanted us to give them assurance that we would continue to run the sites for the length of the contract they wanted to give us. So we've gone to great lengths, and Philip's gone to great lengths to assure them of our intention to continue to pay the contract. That has now been signed and novation is complete, but that delay has meant we've not saved everything we were intending to save for the year.
Understood. Thank you. Thank you.
Just before bringing Councillor Sutherland, just on that note, last year I think part of the budget process, I think we kind of, the way the process works, we should kind of just highlight it, that we saved £70,000 with the VAT aspect. Are we still saving that or in the region of a
Yeah, so PLT's budget now has been reduced by that VAT loss.
Councillor Sutherland.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. I just wanted to correct a mistruth that was stated by Councillor Whip earlier about coal market redevelopment. He said that during the Conservative administration that we intended to turf out, I think he used the word, traders and offer them no provision to carry on trading. It's simply not true. That was never the intention, it was never said, it was never written, and it was always the intention to house the traders elsewhere, somewhere, as in temporary accommodation of some description. Even through conversations with Julie Whittaker, who was then the programme lead on that project, we asked the question, we asked the relevant questions to make sure that it was budgeted for. So it was completely unfair and untrue to make a statement that we have any intention to turf out traders. That's simply not true.
Councillor Ahmed.
Yeah, just want to pick up the point which Councillor David Corbett-Price mentioned about the interest payments. Obviously at the moment we've got significant money in the bank because of the regeneration programmes across Pendle. But I don't think it's a healthy position as a business perspective to look at interest and say, well, we're doing all that because of interest payments. Yes, at the moment it's fine. Interest rates are coming down and will be coming down. And secondly, that money is going to get spent. So we can't be relying on interest payments. I don't know if it's going to be in 3-4 years' time, but I don't think that's really a good model or healthy model to something that we should be really be singing praises about. Secondly, just in terms of the discussion around, I think it's quite dangerous, the point that's been made about money is being taken from certain parts of Pendle and it being invested in else. I think that's rather dangerous talk in my view. I think we should refrain from having discussion like that. I think because we are a borough, we are Pendle, and there always been historically always been occasion where more money has been spent in certain areas. And being representing Barrowford, we don't see much of that investment. Most of other parts, including West Craven and Corn and Nelson, Bryfield, have seen investment. We haven't. But I think to say things like that isn't helpful, and there's reasons why investment is historically being spent by government in certain areas, and there's reasons behind it. I don't think it's helpful to the debate.
Yes, Chairman, on that one, I do not think it is right that all the rest of Pendle are having to have £250,000 in this current financial year taken out of that wider pot in order to pay for the revenue consequences of Pendle Rise, which were not planned, they were not in the budget, and as the famous words of Richard Gibson, former Director of Resources, that scheme was expected to consume its own smoke. In other words, we weren't taking resources from the wider Pendle, and that's what's happened. And that, to my mind, is wrong. And if Councillor Nadeem Ahmed thinks that that is dangerous talk, if it's dangerous talk to tell the truth, I'm sorry, but I will speak truth because that is the case. It wasn't intended, and £250,000 later on, and another £250,000 coming down the track is money that should be being spent on services, Pendle, not picking up the revenue consequences. And I'm not going to go over the ground. I mean, I think it should be funding the revenue costs as well as the capital cost. Councillor Ahmed says that Barrowford hasn't seen investment. Well, Barrowford is benefiting from the Nelson Town Deal funding. We've got the new shelter in Barrowford. You've got other facilities which are being developed in Victoria Park, which are in Barrowford. So it's Nelson Town Deal money that is being spent in the parish of Barrowford. So don't come. You haven't seen any investment because you have. And I just want to go back to Councillor Sutcliffe, where he said it was always the intention to house traders, and that money was included in the budget in order to facilitate that. Well, if that's the case, if money was included in the budget, why does this report tell us that we've had to find £238,000 from reserves in order to accommodate the traders from Coal Market? Because that's a reality. It's on here, black and white. £238,000 unanticipated because it wasn't budgeted for.
Thank you, Councillor. Yeah, I mean, just to reiterate that point, we've had this funding for about 4 years, 4 years for the town deal, and on average, we probably, the investment aspect of it, we probably earned about £1 million every year minimum, approximately.
No.
What's the?
No.
No. How much?
No.
How much should we?
Maybe £500,000.
£500,000.
Yeah.
So, £500,000 for about 4 years. That's approximately £2 million. And these revenue costs we start to accrue last June, July time. So I think we've got to keep things in context. And yeah. Councillor Ahmed.
Sorry, I think you made the point. That's the point I was going to make in terms of if you that's the point I'm saying. The reason I use the word dangerous talk is because I think it becomes a bit nonsensical, because we then arguing about we've got this interest payment. Then you could argue the other way that resource, then that interest should be reinvested in something else. We've never worked out at council. For example, we've sold assets we've sold, for example, where the police station is. I tried to argue at the time, because that was in Whitefield, I tried to argue, look, that money should be invested in Whitefield. And rightly, I think, because that was my ward, I tried to argue that point, but I think rightly the decision was made, look, it's a Pendle council asset, it goes into the pot, and resources are allocated accordingly. And that's the point I was trying to make. I accept what the council would be saying in terms of we'd rather have money allocated across Pendle, but it is what it is.
Yeah. Final speaker, Councillor Henry.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, I think all the councillors have made the points. Unfortunately, every time we talk about this, we have to repeat all these stories again. So can we make progress? I've seconded it. Can we move on?
All those in favour?
Yeah.
Thank you. The next item is the general fund revenue and capital budgets.
Anissa, you love this.
Councillors. Karen?
So I'm just going to pick up some key points from this report. Turning to page 3, the final 25-26 financial settlement was announced in early February 2025, and the key headlines are council tax increases. Again, Shire districts are permitted to raise council tax by up to 3% or £5. The same goes for fire authorities. With the authorities with social care responsibilities being able to increase by a further 2%, and the Police and Crime Commissioner can raise their element by up to 14%.
£14.
£14, sorry. As of today, the fires has been agreed; they are going for £5, and the Police and Crime Commissioner are going for the, well, whilst it's not agreed yet, they're proposing to increase by the maximum 14, as our LCC are forecasting, proposing to increase by the maximum as well. Again, that's agreed the day before our council, so we won't know until the night of the 26th. The government introduced a new recovery grant for this settlement. Pendle has received £453,000 from that grant. And again, mentioned the extended producer responsibility. Again, this is a new grant which isn't part of the core funding settlement, but we've received £897,000 from that grant. The national insurance compensation, so we're receiving £112,000 against a cost of for directly employed staff of £227,000, which leaves a shortfall of £115,000 that's going to have to be picked up from our existing resources. Just other news: the funding guarantee was ceased, so we didn't receive any funding guarantee. So at the top of page 4, that sets out the core funding and how we've been impacted compared to last year. So overall, we had a reduction of core government grant of £204,000 compared to the previous year. Other things to bring to your attention: on the top of page 6, this sets out the government's core spending power calculation, and we've seen an increase, based on the government's figures, we've seen an increase of 1.7% in spending power. However, you'll notice that the employer's NI compensation grant is included in the core spending power calculation, which obviously the costs are far in excess of that. Any other things to mention? On page 13, at paragraph 38, we've set out the medium-term financial plan for the next 3 years, which shows a heavy use of reserves. In 25-26, we're forecasting that we'll need £449,000 to balance the gap. And 26-27, that increases to 1.3 million, with 27-28 it increases to 2.8 million. The level of reserves is shown underneath. Obviously this is not sustainable, and we need to be doing something to balance this budget, and obviously we've suggested increases in income generation which have not been accepted by the council, so we've done what we can to suggest increases and attempts to bridge this gap. The graph on page 14 at point 45 shows how in graphical terms how our reserves are reducing and how our budget gap is increasing, and by the time we get to the 27-28, and I know if local government reorganisation goes ahead, which is looking more like it will this time, then beyond that year we will struggle unless something changes. And as we've discussed, this plan lies heavily on interest income that we're going to generate next year, and as we've said, interest rates are going down and we are spending that income, so we can't rely on that going forward. There is a big interest income target of 1 million in this forecast, which is a target, and the finance team will have to work really hard to generate that level of interest income. The capital programme is set out at the top of page 16 and in full detail in the appendix. And that again is a challenging capital programme and relies on borrowing to fund. Well, we're forecasting that we'll have to take on another 4 million-ish of prudential borrowing before the end of the programme at the end of 27-28. The only other thing to bring to attention is that this report proposes that we increase the council tax by 2.99%, which the government assumes that everybody will increase the council tax by their maximum allowed, and calculating the core spending power and the level of government grants that we will receive. An increase of 2.99% increases the Band D by £8.93 a year. And it also requests that we use reserves to balance the budget gap. Any questions?
Thank you, Karen. That was quite a detailed report and a lot of information there. Obviously, I think this year we kind of obviously we've had government cuts over the years. That's why we're in this situation. I think our core budget has been cut by, I think, in the region of about 67% over the last 15 years. But this year, I think the national insurance contributions internally and also with our partners, PLT and Liberator, that's having a massive effect. And I know, you kind of pointed out that there's a shortfall of £115,000 internally within the council. So I think we note this report. We've got a full council budget meeting next Thursday, and I think at that point the council can make that decision of the 2.99% increase, or whatever increase, if any, if they want to implement. And I mean, you talk, there's mention about the reserves that could change depending on what other proposals come. I mean, all the proposals have been submitted. Budget proposals have been submitted by all the, I assume, all the groups. So that figure might change as well. So I think we note that at this stage. But yeah, happy to support the report, generally speaking.
Second the chair.
We've got David, Corbett-Price, and then David.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I mean, I said it would be a slightly depressing read, and it certainly is in parts. There's glimmers of hope, but not many. And I think that little table in Power 38, I think, is the one that we really have to be mindful of. I mean, the decisions that we as councillors make this year on trying to reduce that 449 deficit, and then trying to think ahead about what the consequences are for the future, are the ones to stop the fact that if we had one more column on that table, that would be negative. I note in the comments below as well, it says even before then, because of course if we as councillors do not make significant effort this time round and next time round to try to bridge that gap, then a section 114 notice will come in earlier. So, let's everybody pay attention to that, and let's see if we can do what we need to. I think, having had discussions with Karen about this in the past as well, it's one of those things that there are consequences for services. There are consequences for the assets we have and the resources we have. And I think one of those things is that we need to be seen to be making efforts as well. If you just say no to this charge and no to this saving or whatever, then you're not making any effort. And anybody who comes along as a third party to inspect whether we're being responsible enough to balance budgets will say, well, why didn't you put that up? I'll put it up because I'm taking over now. Why didn't you stop doing that? I'll stop doing it because you didn't. And all those things have consequences. Some of these decisions are in our control. The big long list from page 7 to 10, some of those are not in our control. We have to thank the current government for having to having to put up the national insurance contributions. I think many public sector bodies are quite lucky that they get at least around about half bailed out. Think about the poor private sector. You know, they have to bear it. There'll be less recruitment, less retention. These are consequences that these decisions have. So, in terms of making efforts and doing things, on page 11, we've got a couple of things up at the top there where we've had reviews, we've done things, but we seem to be just letting them drag on. So can I ask my sort of first question is, what are we doing at the moment in terms of the leisure review and the admin building review?
So, is that any further questions, or is that?
There will be, yes, but I thought it was rather than have 5 questions or whatever, I'll just do that one as a first if I may.
I can take all of them, it's better just to respond together. Then.
Okay, all right, well, there's leisure review, admin building review.
Yep.
In terms of some of the charges and things that were, for example, I'm looking at the bottom of page 12 and top of page 13, you know, we as an overview and scrutiny group did an awful lot of work with David Walker and his team, looking at these sorts of things about, you know, wheelie bins and bulky waste and all those kind of things. We're looking at recycling and how to make that more attractive to people. Your bin gets stolen, the recycling bin is free as a replacement, and that was our proposal. But at the moment, they've been rejected. So I encourage you to rethink about those and wonder whether now I have your support as an exec to potentially revisit those as part of our overall fees and charges policy. I also wonder as well what we have as an idea for the longer term. One of the things, would you like us as councillors to potentially start to think about a 3-year budget? I have suggested in the past, we all work on a 1-year budget, which in the past, because we've been a very hung council with marginal, no overall control, we tend to fall guilty to kicking things down the road a little bit, thinking, well, let's wait till next year, because we may or may not be in power next year, who knows? And again, what plans are we doing to try to actually get councillors to think about a 3-year budget / forecast?
Okay. So on relation to the first one, the leisure review, I mean, that work is still in progress. As previously as the shared administration and the leader of the council gave assurances that we will keep all the 3 leisure centres open, and you know, we will run those. In relation to the increase in fees and with certain things, there'll be recycling and wheelie bins. We've got the budget process next week, and you know, different groups are welcome to put their proposals in, you know, whatever increases they want to introduce or not to introduce. And then in relation to the 3-year budgets, to be honest with you, we've had uncertainty over the last, I don't know how many years, because we've just been getting from the national government, we've been getting 1-year settlements, so we've not been able to plan ahead. I totally agree to, generally speaking, you know, you want that certainty to, you know, plan ahead and have kind of sustainability, but we've just been in such a situation from the national government that they're not kind of giving us these 3-year settlements. But there is talk that from next year that they will start to provide that 3-year settlement again. Once that happens, I think then at that point we can probably look and review. Yeah. I've got Councillor.
Thanks, Chair. I don't intend speaking very much here. Obviously, we've got the budget meeting next week, and we'll all have a chance there. In terms of the leisure review, I think it's quite clear what the decision of the shared administration was to invest in the 3 leisure centres that we've got. I think that that is happening this year, unlike the Conservatives who did kick the can down the road, halted investment of £862,000 at the time, and leaving the roof on the Colne Sports Hall leaking. We seized the chance to actually carry out those repairs. Unfortunately, in the gap between the Conservatives axing repairs to the roof and actually getting the work carried out, the cost of that doubled from circa £100,000 to over £200,000. So we don't need any lectures about conservative economics from Councillor David Coleman Price, do we? I think, Mr Chairman, that we're in a reasonably healthy position, that Councillor David Coleman Price 3 years ago said, well, in 3 years' time, we'll be having a Section 141 notice. Well, here we are, 3 years down the line, no Section 141 notice in the offing at all, despite the fact that the Labour government has cut the resources that are coming from central government. So, you know, we're making a do. And certainly at next week's budget for next year, I'll be proposing a budget that adds a little bit into reserves, doesn't take anything out. So it can be done. And that, Chairman, I'll just come back to it again, is despite us having to pick up the tab for the Nelson Town deal, which is costing quite a bit of money.
Thank you. Sarah Price.
Thank you. I would naturally opine, and it's really in this report, that it is a great shame that our hands have been tied so few ways to control our budget, because a previous Labour administration tied us into a very long Liberata contract that has given us no wiggle room, and obviously we see the increase in that contract and that effect. I think that this paragraph 9, really had some resonance with me, and I would like to urge that the exec perhaps considers writing to Jonathan Hinder on it. It says here, overall, the Council's core spending power, this is councils nationally, is set to increase by 3.8 billion or 6.3%, assuming all councils implement the maximum allowable council tax increases. This equates to a 3.8% real term increase after adjusting for inflation. And then the final devastating sentence on that paragraph is that sadly Pendle, everywhere else appears to be getting an average of 3.8, we're getting 1%. And I know that so many people were so much looking forward to a Labour government coming in. I feel that 1%, when you actually then add in the catastrophic effects of the national insurance rise on the council, and I know that Mr Walker was really hoping that all of the costs of the new changes to waste recycling, food collection and so on would be covered by the government, but now we find there are enormous holes there as well. So in fact, I actually feel that probably that 1% is over-optimistic. If you take those two things away, we're in a negative situation. I think that we should write to Mr Hinder pointing out that his government has increased the costs but not given us the wherewithal. And that's to be, you know, and we're all very regretful about that. I would like to ask a question, just ignorance on my part. Page 10, halfway down, there's talk of a housing stock modelling survey, and there's obviously some relief that it's cheaper than a housing condition survey. So I'd like to understand what the actual difference is. Is one a desktop thing, and another's like a real person looking at the houses?
Yeah, through yourself, Chair, effectively that is it.
Okay, so in a sense it's cheaper, but in fact not nearly as detailed or giving us the kind of depth, especially that we would wish, potentially.
We'll certainly get through yourself, Chair. It is a cheaper, a simpler process. It will hopefully give us decent information, but yes, not the level of detail that a property by property survey would, yes.
At the beginning of this meeting, a lovely gentleman came over and introduced himself to us, and he is the CEO of Pendle Leisure Trust. And I'm sure that he feels as anxious as I do at the top of page 11, where it says really boldly, the latest review took place in July 2024, the outcome being that running 3 wet and dry leisure centres is not sustainable. So I started this saying where we sort of tied ourselves up in knots, feeling anxious because we can't do things because of Liberata. And it appears that Pendle Council currently writes on page 11 very clearly this truth, and yet seeks to do nothing about it or not deal with it. I don't know whether it's pertinent for me to ask the expert in the room a question. It isn't.
No.
What a shame. I'm sure he would have lots to tell us. We would all learn from him, and he would perhaps give us hope.
Yeah, I'm sure there's other forums that can be picked up. You know, you probably have, all the groups have representatives on the Pendle Leisure Trust board, and I'm sure you can ask that question at that point, and that will be answered appropriately. And over the last, since, obviously not in shared administration currently, but as a shared administration, we have invested over £630,000 over the last 2 years into Pendle Leisure Trust. And we allocated £1 million last year, and that money and that investment is continuing and taking place as we speak. Councillor Sutcliffe.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Hanif always says to me when I see him smile, he tells me to smile, and I think that's because my face doesn't always relay what's going on inside. And actually, I'm a real optimist. I'm quite a happy person and a real optimist, so I want to try and look to the future a little bit and try and look for a little bit of positivity. And when we're looking, when we're looking through the rest of this year, obviously we'll have Coal Market Hall coming back online as an asset to this authority. And then as we go further down the line, we'll have the Nelson, obviously the assets of the Town Deal and various different buildings that we've sort of acquired along the way, and that should be bringing us new income generation opportunities. So Karen sort of said 27, 28 looks dire, for want of a better phrase. That wasn't your word, that's mine. Not looking good. But when we start to factor in some of the changes of obviously the revenue implications of some of those projects that are coming away from us, and then looking at the income generation from those things, are they factored into that profiling? Or is it just a case of we just simply do not know yet, and that they will be done in the future? I'm trying, as I said right at the start, I'm trying to be optimistic on this. Let's look for something that we can grab hold of.
So there's no income factored in for Pendle Rise, because that will be part of the Pendle joint venture.
Okay.
So it would probably take a while to get any income out of that. As far as the market's concerned,
yeah, again through yourself, Chair. This is detailed in the market report later on the agenda, but effectively we are very optimistic that the current level of subsidy council pays will be eradicated over the next 2.5 years, but there is further detail of that in the later report on the agenda.
So with those things in mind, things are looking a little bit better in terms of the liability.
Absolutely. Bright and positive. Councillor Hanif.
Thank you, Chair. Just taking that forward. You know, I sit here and I listen, and sometimes I think we're very negative. You know, going back 4, 5, 6 years ago, we were talking about the council running out of money in 3 years. And every year is the same. And if we look at the figures, to be honest, we're doing quite a lot with the small amount of money we've got. And we've still got 3, 4, 5 years there. So in 3 years' time, you know, we're saying we're not going to have some money. That was said 4 years ago, Section 141, we will be involved in things like this. So I think, you know, looking at all these issues and all these projects, a lot of work is being done, a lot of money is being spent, a lot more than we all anticipated, and obviously the two, Cone and Pendle Rise is half £500,000 already spent. That's come from somewhere, and we're still not, our budgeting and our finances are still quite positive in comparison. So I think we need to keep smiling. That's our job. We've got to keep positive. Okay, we want to take a dig at each other, that's fine. But I think generally over the last several years, we've done a reasonable price. Our view of working is different. For example, the Pendle Leisure Trusts. The Troy Group wants to do it one way, that's fine, it's their prerogative. But when they were running it, they did a piece of work. We planned for £50 million at Seed Hill, that's fine. we have taken over and we have a different view altogether. But from where we started, I think we've spent a lot of money, and you've just mentioned some monies, and there's more, there's more bids gone in. If you look at the town centres, if you look at Cone, if you look at Barlick, if you look at Byfield, work is being done. And I didn't even realise that you were going to get £50,000 for a place in Byford. But so, if you look at each of the towns, slowly but surely positivity is happening within the means we've got, Chair. And I think we should be complimenting the staff on the hard work behind the scenes. There's a lot of pressure and stress on them. We don't see that sometimes. We just say, can we want this? You know, and how they sometimes go about achieving it is actually quite interesting. So I'm obviously going to second this. I know we got issues, and I know a lot of change is going to happen, but I think we're all working towards the positives. And I can see a bright future, to be honest. You know, as much as every year we sit down and every meeting we just moan and groan sometimes, but we really are. If you look at each of the towns and the developments that are happening in small or large ways, I'm quite positive. You know, but that doesn't mean we don't look at the finances. We're not obviously asking the right questions. So I think we should all have a pat on the back, actually, there as well.
Thank you. Chair? Thank you, yeah. Absolutely, we've got to be positive. And recently we put, as a council, we put a bid in for the leisure centres. And if that is successful, and again, I'm quite positive that we will be successful, that'll be bringing in investment in the region of over £5 million. So, got to be positive about it. Councillor David.
Yeah, just one quick point. I've been accused seemingly of being overly negative 3 or 4 years ago.
I wasn't picking on you, but I was generalising.
Yes, accountant. Unfortunately, chaps, the thing is, we've lived off the interest. Remember that point we made before about £1 million, £1.5 million of interest. We've lived off that, and we've avoided making decisions. There are plenty of decisions we can make which still don't have an impact on services on there. I am an incredibly positive person. I'm also I'm accused of being too positive in our house, next to doom-monger Sarah here. But let me tell you, that's the only reason we've avoided a 114 and the big issues is the fact we've had this enormous amount of investment income. In a sense, we've got to thank Liz Truss for putting up the interest rate, and we've got to thank Rachel Reeves for keeping them there. It's a terrible, terrible setup, I know. But that's the only reason we benefited.
No, we're not going to. Cousin Imam, you're the last speaker.
Sorry, I can't keep a straight face.
I'm so happy with all the positivity thanks to the previous government, all this investment that Conservatives put into Pendle. I mean, we've seen the fruits of all that millions of pounds investment in Pendle. And the reason I know Council Whip's laughing, but that's the reality of it. That's where the funding has come from. If you look at Cone, if you look at Nelson, that's where all the funding has come from. But having said that, I mean, in terms of the budget itself and the finances of the council, I don't think we should be overly positive. I think that's been the issue with some other councils who have totally ignored and just come saying, oh, we're all right, we're okay for this year. And I don't think that's the right way. And the advice is clear from the officers. So if we really want to back the officer, we should be listening to our officers who are giving us advice for the sake of the authorities, for the sake of our residents. So if we're going to keep spending money the way we are, I think in a way, in an unfortunate sort of way, I think we're possibly lucky that there is this devolution deal on the table, and in a sad way, but in a way, it saves the blushes of the council in terms of the way we're spending money. I think we've been fortunate in terms of the reserves, which, yes, over the year, various administrations, we have built up the reserves, and that's really helped us out at difficult times. But then the reserves are dwindling, and we can't keep relying on reserves.
Just a quick point on the devolution side. The debt and the assets will be shared amongst the new, the new unitary that forms. So that doesn't go away. Karen, final, if you can then move to the road.
So whilst it's good to be positive, this is not a positive position to be in. And as we've said, as Councillor Corbyn-Price has said, yes, we have benefited from high inflation rates, high interest rates, and the fact that we've had a lot of government money to invest. Prior to that, COVID grants, we got a lot of COVID grants that would help to the bottom line, which is why we've managed to get on for another 3 years. But we will be heavily criticised by the external auditors because there is nothing in this budget that helps us balance the book. The books, if you think of your home, you know, you can't spend more than you're bringing in. If you were at home, you would not be doing that, and we should not be doing that. And we should be looking at ways to balance the budget.
Quite noted. Thank you. Yeah. All those in favour? Yeah. Thank you. Okay, next item is the council tax premiums for empty homes and second homes.
Move it, Chair.
Yeah.
All those in favour? Thank you. Lancashire, insurance tender procurement reserves.
Move it, Chair.
Second that.
All those in favour? Thank you. Then we've got the Lancashire Nature Recovery Strategy. Neil, what do you?
Sure, I'll be brief. We brought it here because we have a very narrow window. It's this part of the process is a narrow legal point, and we should only be objecting to this if there's a legal point behind it. Chairman, I think it's a good document to go out to consultation. It's important. It sets out across Lancashire. First of all, it maps everywhere, and if you go on the interactive map, it really does show you what assets we've got in the area. It also looks at the 7 main areas of typologies of resources we have, and looks at 25 key species that are really on the brink, Chairman. My view on this is that it's a fit document to go out to public consultation, which will happen once all the supporting authorities have made their comments within the 28 days, which expired on the 6th of March. So my view is that we the council should support it to go out to consultation.
Thank you, Neil. I'm happy to move and support that.
I'll second that, Chair.
Councillor David.
Yeah, Chairman, happy to support as well. Councillor Tom Whip is our, I don't know, if I use the term expert, that's probably overstated the case, but Councillor Tom Whip has spent quite a bit of time looking into this, and he's happy to endorse it. His one issue that he has is badgers. No, not badgers. Beavers. Beavers. I said badgers. Beavers. He wants beavers, but I don't think that's necessarily a reason for Pendle Council to put a spoke in the wheels. And the reason why he advocates the reintroduction of beavers is because of the beneficial impact that they have on wildlife, and also the beneficial impact they have on flooding issues. So there's lots of benefits to beavers, but I'm sure that he will put those issues forward when it comes to the public consultation. And if anybody else is interested in, I can't think talking up beavers is a nice phrase for it, but if anybody else is wanting to badger about beavers, you know, they can stick the oar in as well.
This is actually a really superb report by Lancashire County Council, and when we looked at it with Mr Watson, he told us that we were lucky to see it, but I see that it's actually on our website now. Oh.
I gave it to you before it was in the public domain, so
but it's such an important document, not just in terms of our area, so you can actually skip just to the bit that pertains to us, if that's the way you are. But it's fascinating from a coastal perspective, from an urban perspective. There's so much to see. It would be wonderful if Mr Preston would share it as a document for everybody to enjoy. It's a light read, it's really well written, there are good tables in it, and I really do feel everybody would learn something. There are some horrific statistics, aren't there, in terms of nature loss, but there's also much to be, and we talk about the hopefulness, there's much more hopeful here in terms of 500,000 acres could be remediated were this strategy to be followed. I would concur completely about the beaver issue. I'm quite jealous of Shrewsbury that has town centre beavers. I mean, how exciting is that? And certainly we do have flooding issues from peat moors and other places. And obviously if the experts can find places where beavers can slow down the run of water, it's to be benefited. You know, it's a huge benefit to places that suffer from flooding. And I was really pleased to see the only mammal that is put forward for a special focus is the red squirrel. And I'll tell you something, that when I was at school, in infant school, my nickname was Squirrel Nutkin. And I was very proud of this as a nickname. You can see Zafar's laughing at that. But I've always had an affinity with red squirrels, coming from the coast, coming from near where red squirrels are at Formby. And there is exciting news about red squirrels, because who knew red squirrels are hitchhikers? They are hitchhikers, and what they do is they catch lifts on HGVs that come down from Scotland, and when they get to Cone and they sit about in that traffic on the North Valley, they hop off. And there are videos of red squirrels gambling on fence tops in Waterside. I'm very, very jealous. They're not in Bullswood and Fulbridge, not that we can see, but they are in Waterside. So we are officially an area, in this area, amazingly, that is a potential for red squirrels to be brought back. And what we need to do, really, is create that space for the red squirrels to come back. And that does mean control of grey squirrels. But there's quite a lot of that in this report, and it was actually written by the Northwest expert on that. He took over a place outside Lee, a wood outside Lee, that only had red squirrels, grey squirrels in it. He managed it proactively for 6 years, and now those red squirrels have moved back in. So it could happen here, but there are plenty more species, including the curlew, including skylarks, all kinds of things that we could see really flourishing in Pendle.
Chair, I really do hope that we're not going to be sending out reams of paper when all this information is online and much more accessible.
Send a link, yeah.
A link.
Yeah, Councillor Newman.
Just a quick one. We talk about reintroduction of beavers. That's fine. But why don't we clean up our rivers first? Because beavers will not come to pollution. You will not live in a polluted river, no matter how you look at it. So I think we need to clean up our rivers.
Good point.
Well, it's common sense, isn't
Okay.
it?
All those in
We can
favour?
live in this.
Thank you. Okay, the next item is the forward plan.
Over, Chair.
Okay. So, exclusion of press and public. To consider excluding the public and press from the meeting during the following item of business in the use of the power contained in section 100 of the Local Government Act 1972 as amended in relation to exempt information related to the financial or business affairs of any particular person, including the authority holding that information. So,
Yeah, can I move that we do exclude the press fully due to the sensitive nature of business?
okay.
Yes, second, Chair.
Thank you.
Chair, can I just question whether that is necessary? I think that both of these issues can be discussed openly and in the interest of transparency. There is no need to take these with press and public excluded.
Councillor, yeah, thank you. We've been advised that due to the commercial nature of these items, that's why it's very important that we take them with exclusion of press and public.
But Chair, historically we have taken these sorts of discussions in open committee. There really is no need to exclude press and public. You know, why keep it secret?
Like I said, I've been advised that just the commercial element of that it's important that we do, because it's a very sensitive matter, so we take it with exclusion of press and public. So it's been moved and seconded. All those in favour? Thank you.